We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host of the show is Michael Duca. How are you, Michael?
Well, I'm baseball past and present. I don't know how much future I have, but let's hope I have enough to get through the program.
Well, let's hope for a long future that far outweighs the past. And so let's start in the present on this show. I want to pay a little homage to a recent retiree. At least he announced it, effective at the end of the year. Matt Cain, Cisco Giants, three-time world champion, and they could not, no way they would have won any of those championships without Matt Cain.
I totally agree. It's hard to pick out favorite Matt Cain moments, but you know it's in modern day culture, Ralph. You know you've reached the status of an icon when your name acquires a position in the lexicon, and being caned, I guess that's an adverb. Being caned has become a thing, and it means going out there and getting 0 or 1 run of support, which happened to him in about 40% of his starts, which is how, it is beyond me when you look at his numbers, how he can be 8 games below 500 in his career. But then I remember, oh yeah, he lost a lot of 1-0 and 2-1 games, a lot of them.
Right. Well, can it be, I've thought about that a lot over the years with not just Matt Cain, why some pitchers have low ERAs and low winning percentages as well, which you wouldn't think would go hand in hand. Could it be the pace in which he delivers pitches? You know, is he a plotter? And do defenses tend to sit on their heels? You know, players, taking too long. Could that be it? Time in between pitches?
Could it be it? It could, and maybe it was at some point earlier in his career when the Giants were not blessed with quite the same up-the-middle defense that they've had during their championship run. But what I found really interesting was that, it became so painfully obvious that this was happening that I started looking at other teams and discovered that essentially if you go through the 30 teams, almost all of them have one guy every year who is 2 or 3 standard deviations off the norm in this way, who, gets 1.8 runs of support per game or 2.1 runs of support per start, which is, not enough to be a consistent winner. No matter how.
So it's basically the law of large numbers and just thrown out there. Just the ball hits bat, this, that, and the other thing. But
kind of randomly seems to happen.
But for him,
for years,
it was many starts. It wasn't,
yes.
It happens with every pitcher. Couldn't understand that. That's the way it was.
Well, Sister Mary Joseph would have told you that it's a mystery, my child.
Yeah, I think she would have had other ideas for me. She would.
She might have thought that you were a mystery also, but
right, exactly. We never would have gotten to Matt Cain in our conversation. And by the way, I think she's a mystery too. So
there you go.
Whatever it is.
There you go. Nobody knows what hides under the wimple.
That's very true. Boy, I have an early
Matt
on.
holds, Matt holds a special place in my heart for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
I cannot remember why, but before he was ever called up to the Giants, he pitched at AT&T Park. The Fresno Grizzlies, I believe that the season that Chansey Park opened, I think they just didn't quite finish it on time. Because my recollection is that the Grizzlies came to AT&T Park and played 2 or 3 afternoon games in front of basically a handful of media and hardly anyone else. And my 2 relatively clear recollections are that the Grizzly mascot tried to do a trick on the field and lost his head, literally. It went rolling down the grass, which is sort of like the ultimate disaster for a mascot, that you can see who's in the suit. And that Matt Cain pitched there and pitched well. I can remember all the anticipation, all the fans saying, "Let's see this kid. Let's see this kid. We've heard so much about him. You know, he's a flamethrower. He's a strike thrower. He's a big kid. He's going to be the anchor of the rotation. Let's go get him." And then the other great memory that I have, of course, is in 2012 when he snapped what had become an embarrassingly long 39-year streak of me not seeing a no-hitter in person. And he not only made sure I saw a no-hitter, he gave me a perfect game to watch.
Did you see Halicki's no-hitter?
That was the last one I saw. Yep.
I saw that game, too. It was a doubleheader with the Mets, and Cain hit a home run with one hand. He was fooled by a pitch, and he drove a ball with one hand off the bat and into center field, and Halicki pitched that no-hitter against my Mets. That, wow, that goes back.
Yeah, and his last strikeout victim in that game in the top of the ninth was none other than Jesus Alou.
Oh, didn't remember that.
It was not the third out of the game. It was of the inning. It was the second out of the inning, but it was his last strikeout.
Jesus Alou, was he a Met? I guess he was.
For a few minutes.
Yeah, thinking about that. Wow, just long enough to make San Francisco Giant history.
Yeah, well, and that was my 22nd birthday present to myself, going to that doubleheader, all by myself. And it was about a week after my birthday, if I remember right. It was in late August.
Wow. See how baseball, everything revolves around baseball with some of us crazies. In other words,
well, this is absolutely true. You know, all those bricks out by the Willie Mays statue were purchased or were in essence given by the Giants to people who purchased charter seats and helped provide a large chunk of the funding to begin the construction of the ballpark. And we got a brick, and we got to put on it a certain, we were given a limitation. This was Twitter before it was Twitter. We had a limit on how much we could say, and my own brick out there is very simple and to the point. Life begins on opening day.
Absolutely does. Yes. That's well said, and that's beautiful, beautiful brick out there. And all right, I want to know what your take is on this stand up for the anthem, the war song, sit down, put the team in the locker room. What's your thing? My take is, why don't they just change the song to Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles and forget about it? But what's your take?
I mean, if you're going to do Here Comes the Sun, shouldn't it be Richie Valens?
Yeah.
I mean, he did a pretty iconic version of Woodstock, didn't he?
Yeah. Was that Joe Cocker? Richie Havens, you mean?
Richie Havens. I'm sorry, Richie Havens. You're right. Richie Valens died in the
plane, right?
In the Clear Lake plane crash.
The The Day the Music Died, the Crickets, I think it was, and a whole bunch of...
Chantilly Lace, the Big Bopper.
And A Pretty Face. Wow, I can remember that day too. Marty Rose, my co-host on the New York show, I guess we were 11 or something like that, somewhere around there. And I was in his house, and I remember hearing it on the radio, and we looked at each other, and wow.
My take on the whole thing is this, and you asked, so be prepared for a lengthy answer here. The song itself, Woodrow Wilson asked to be played at military events and other appropriate occasions, and that's a direct quote, in 1918. And so the Red Sox began playing it during the 7th inning stretch. And that was its first known usage in baseball, but it did not become the national anthem until 1939, and it did not become a fixture in baseball to start the game until the middle of World War II, which means that somehow, God knows how, Ralph, but somehow we managed to have a country for 170 years without standing up before a baseball game and saluting the flag in some fashion.
Right.
I still don't know how we managed to have an enduring republic without this. My feeling on it is pretty straightforward. I even published this as a Facebook status. Nations cannot demand patriotism. They are responsible to earn it.
Just like respect, parental respect, this, that, and the other thing.
All of those things. And so my feeling is very simply, these people, first of all, they are not disrespecting the flag. And that's not my opinion. That's according to the United States Code that covers flag behavior. There's an actual section in the flag code, U.S. Code Title III, that is called respect for the flag. And you are not required to stand for the national anthem. It is suggested that you stand for the national anthem. Women are not required to take off their hats. Men should, doesn't say must, should. But let's talk about a few things that are listed as being disrespectful to the flag before we talk about what these players are doing. One thing that is listed as being specifically disrespectful for the flag is making it into a tie. I've seen more than one presidential candidate wearing that. Putting it on a T-shirt, putting it on underwear, putting it on a paper napkin, a paper plate, a paper cup, or anything else meant to be disposed.
You see that all the time. You go to a parade downtown Alameda. You see that constantly.
Using it in any form of advertising, including specifically political advertising. But here's one that really gets most people. They refuse to believe that I'm telling them the truth, but it's right there spelled out in the code. The flag is to be displayed hanging freely. It is not to be draped. It is not to be gathered or pleated or bunched or displayed parallel to the ground, which means that all these displays with 75 active servicemen dragging the flag out onto the field and covering the field from foul line to foul line or from 10-yard line to 10-yard line and making it ripple during the anthem are a violation of the flag code. So if we want to talk about being respectful to the flag, why don't we start by, being respectful to the flag all the time? These guys are not disrespecting the flag, and they are not disrespecting the country. This is what I've had such a hard time with my friends who are on the opposite end of the spectrum. They tell me, well, How can you be so disrespectful to the veterans who fought and died for the freedoms you enjoy? And my response to them is threefold. Number one, I have on public display in my home the flag from my father's coffin. He was a World War II veteran. And the shell casings from the 21-gun salute that was delivered at his military funeral. Number two, I have a son who spent 5 years in the Marine Corps and Special Forces. Number three, exactly which freedoms is it that you think they fought and died for? Apparently you don't think the First Amendment is one of them. But I have a feeling that the Founding Fathers put it first because it was the most important. And the First Amendment guarantees citizens the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's what these gentlemen are doing. They are not expressing anything except profound love and respect for their country by virtue of the fact that they are attempting to make it better.
And this is the only nation, really, where we could do that freely.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the only nation. I think you could probably get away with
yes.
Canada, or Great Britain.
There's Britain, yes.
But the point.
But I mean, democracy is the only form of government where you can do that.
Well, and let's turn the question around and ask it this way: if you had children, did you ever discipline them?
Sure.
Why? Why did you discipline them? Because they weren't perfect. And you wanted to move them closer to perfection, right?
A way of saying it, of course.
Okay. So,
no matter,
were you disrespectful to them? Were you disrespectful to them when you did that?
I don't think I was.
No. Did you still love them?
Of course.
Of course. That's why you disciplined them, because you love them. That's what these people are doing. That's what they are doing. They are standing up and they're saying, as blessed and as privileged as we are to live in this country, the minute we think it's perfect, it automatically isn't. And you always have to strive to improve.
Well, nothing is perfect.
Exactly. And perfection is asymptotic for those in the math world. It's something which you approach. It's like the arrow heading to the target in Zen. In order for the arrow to get to the target, first it has to get halfway there. And then once it's halfway there, in order to get to the target, it still has to go halfway there, and halfway there, and halfway there. And so it's always approaching the target, but in the Zen koan, it never reaches the target because the target is perfection.
Wow. Very well put. Very well put.
Yeah,
and from that, Matt Cain was perfect that day.
Yes. He was perfect that day with the help of possibly the greatest catch I've seen in person by Gregor Blanco in center field.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Oh, my goodness. Just go to YouTube and Google Gregor Blanco, Matt Cain. Gregor Blanco went from kind of the edge of Triples Alley over to left center field and back towards the warning track and leaped and laid out horizontally and snow-coned a ball in the seventh inning, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
It was.
I will look at that as soon as the show ends.
Yeah, that was an absolutely brilliant play. And once that play occurred, you just kind of knew. You were sitting there in the ballpark and thinking, well, maybe, but oh no. After that, it's got to happen. Got to happen. I mean, there's not going to be a tougher play than that.
Michael, he Cain combined with Lincecum is really as good a duo as I've seen in my lifetime being a fan. I mean, 1-2 combination. Overall, who was 1, who was 2?
Overall, Timmy was 1, and Matt was 2. But, I think it's better if we can borrow from another
Taking nothing away
sport.
from Matt, by the way, when you say that.
No, I was going to say, if we can borrow from another sport for a moment, I would really consider them 1 and 1A. They're like a stable entry.
Okay.
And I would also suggest to you that there have been some other pretty good combinations. Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling is a pretty substantial pair.
That was good.
Koufax and Drysdale weren't bad in their time.
Hey, listen, I can go back to Lemon and Garcia and
Feller and yeah. No, I know. I'm just, I love those guys that I saw and that I know and that I consider to be, people I'm friends with. But I also don't want to, make a statement that people are going to back away from and say, well, geez, I can't believe anything he says if he says those are the greatest pitchers, greatest 1-2 punch ever, or at least ever in our lifetimes. There are guys who certainly compare, but
right.
They were in their own way. They were both special. They were both power pitchers. They were both right-handed pitchers. They were both fearless.
Totally different deliveries.
Totally different physical specimens. I mean,
right.
Matt Cain is so big and so strong that you got the feeling that he probably could have thrown Lincecum across the plate at 80 miles an hour.
Exactly. But Lincecum had that quick release across his body that
Tim Lincecum, I remember this very well. I showed him a video in spring training. We were sitting at his locker, and I had a video on my phone. I just asked him, do you remember this? And it was a video taken of him pitching at the University of Washington. And it was taken from the third base dugout, and it was a digital video. And which means, of course, with digital video, it means that you can pretty much stop any given frame and have something very close to a photograph, right?
Right.
Not with Timmy. He had never seen it before, and it blew him away just as it did me. He had the fastest arm speed I've ever seen, and there was nobody in second place. You could not stop the action of his arm on digital video at 30 frames a second. When he uncoiled, it was in motion all the time.
Well,
and I have never seen a piece of video broken down where you couldn't stop the pitcher's arm at some point as he's delivering.
Did those two pitchers like each other? There was competition set up by the press all through their careers between them. How did they respond to that?
They seem to get along just fine to me. I mean, I'm not privy to the clubhouse when we're not in it, and I'm also not there to see the kinds of interactions between guys who didn't pitch on the same day. I mean, each of them had his day. Timmy was a little more likely to talk on the day that he pitched. I mean, neither of them was Russ Ortiz. Russ Ortiz would, give you a 20-minute interview and then excuse himself, say, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be warming up now. Literally.
Right.
And there are a lot of guys.
You can't even look at that. You can't even look at them. They have the headphones on.
Yep. Most pitchers are like that. Everybody has their own way of getting their head into their game space.
Putting the game face on, that kind of thing.
Indeed so. So, the interesting thing is that somehow through this conversation, we managed to bring up Jesus Alou.
Well, anytime
And
you can
Jesus
bring
will
up,
do.
and we were going to talk about early outfielders.
Exactly. And so I thought this is a good way to transition.
Good segue. All right, way to go. Give you a little baseball hustle in between innings. All right, when the Giants first moved to San Francisco, now, first of all, they had Willie. They brought out Willie. But here are some of the guys that they developed in the first few years. Willie Kirkland. Willie Daddy Wags. And this is all off the top of my head. And at that point, coming up are the Alus. So you get guys. The Giants are literally supplying not only the National League, but part of the American League, too. Kirkland went over, starred with Cleveland. Wagner was an angel, one of the original angels. And up come the Alus, followed by the Maddoxes and the Thomasons and the
Time out. You skipped a whole generation in there, followed by the Hendersons and the Bonzes.
Oh yes,
right. And of course, if you're going by the positions that people played, you kind of have to at least give a passing nod to Orlando Cepeda and Willie McCovey, both of whom were defeated by left field.
Right.
Yeah, they were both defeated
and they
by
didn't
left
step
field.
on each other. They didn't step on themselves.
No, they acquitted themselves decently, but neither was truly suited to the position. And then also a guy who only momentarily played for them, but was so good he was the first player selected in the first expansion draft in Major League Baseball history, downtown Ollie Brown, who may have had the best arm of any outfielder who ever played the game. Certainly, it was in the Vladimir Guerrero neighborhood.
Really, that good?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes.
You talk about Barry's dad, Bobby. Pure talent. I picture in my mind the picture of Mays and Bonds going up on that chain link fence to catch. Mays out-rebounds them. They're both about 6 feet off the ground, literally. And two incredibly great outfielders.
I can't say I saw that live. I saw that live on Saturday afternoon game of the week on NBC. And I remember Tony Kubek was speechless. He simply could not even talk about that play. Somebody who wasn't speechless was Willie Mays, who was the best catch he ever made.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. There have been so many. The catch he made over his shoulder in the World Series, it wasn't the catch with that. It was the throw with that.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
The catch, if you ever saw Willie, you can almost see he's going to make that catch. You see that you would almost expect him to make an incredible running catch over his shoulder.
Now you don't know how much of this is hyperbole and how much of this is truth, obviously. But Willie swears that he knew off the bat that he had that ball. The favorite thing about that particular play, and the one thing that Arnold Hano could not put in his book, because he wasn't in the dugout, is that the Giants had brought in a left-handed pitcher to pitch to Vic Wirtz. And the guy's name was Don Little. And Don Little walked out there. I think he threw ball 1, ball 2, and then came in with a pitch that Wirtz hit 470-some feet into an out that Willie almost turned into a double play. The runner barely got back a second.
He kept the double play in order. That's what.
Yeah, Yeah, and then Willie Mays, I'm sorry, and then Little was removed from the game. And he walks into the dugout, tosses his glove in the corner and says, well, man.
I got my man.
Yeah, with just a tiny bit of help.
Right. You know, it comes to mind, too, disabilities. Vic Wirtz suffered from polio as a kid. And
Wow,
when I was growing
I did not know that.
Yeah, polio was, in the 50s, was the big scare. I remember they extended my summer camp a couple of weeks. People afraid to send their kids back to the city, a big epidemic going on. And I didn't...
I'm well aware. My brother had it, and I was the very first group of human beings to get the vaccine. I just happened to be the right age.
Yeah.
Right age.
I think we came in like
to get the oral vaccine.
A sugar cubicle.
Well, the sugar cube, that's the Sabin vaccine, and that came about. I'm gonna clap my hand to my head and do some rapid calculation here and say that was around 1960 or 61. But the Salk vaccine was 1956.
And that was an actual shot. Yes, now I remember.
Yes.
I remember.
And it was actually it was a series of shots. I think you had either 2 or 3.
Oh, okay. That's, I guess, all trauma is blocked with, especially,
and some,
not a big shot taker. I'm not a big shot taker. God knows. Yeah. So he hit it a long way, and the Giants go on and they win 4 games in a row. What a miracle! Speaking of outfielders like we were, that first baseman that couldn't play left field, Dusty Rose played a little left field for the Giants on occasion.
And he kept his shoes shiny.
Yeah, okay. That story I don't remember.
You don't recall?
No.
Dusty was hit by a pitch in that World Series, and the home plate umpire, who I believe, I could be very wrong about this, but I want to say it was another Dusty Bogus, did not grant him first base. And Rhodes said, look at the baseball, you'll see shoe polish on it, and sure enough, there was a smudge, and he was awarded first base.
You know, Michael, I think that might have been Nippy Jones in the 57.
It also happened to Nippy Jones. You are correct. Nippy Jones, I saw play in Sacramento.
Yes, you and I have a lot in common. We both live in Alameda. We lived in Sacramento, and I didn't see him play, but Sacramento, you want to pay homage for a second to a baseball city. Oh, my God. How many people came out of, from Boa to Dusty to, wow, all the way there. And they had night league. Did you ever go to Renfrey Field and watch them play Winter League and what have you?
I did not. I went to Edmonds Field, which later became a Jumco, which later became a medical office building, which has been torn down and is now a different medical office building.
Oh,
so I'm 4 generations removed from the field of my first professional game.
Wow. Sacramento's an interesting place. Let's just...
Yeah, I saw Kuno Berrigan play there. Terry Fox, Woody Held. Wow,
you lived in Sacramento
Winston
long
Brown,
before I
Winston
did.
Yannis. I mean, a pair of Winstons, Winston Brown and Winston Yannis. I never got to
Fitzgerald, the catcher Fitzgerald lived in the north area of Sacramento. Ed Fitzgerald.
Okay.
He'd come back to Sacramento. There's a kid that watched Henry Aaron. He was, his name blank. Milwaukee Brave may not have been on deck when Henry Aaron hit that famous home run against Downing to break Babe Ruth's record. And I can't think of his name. He was from Sacramento. He was an outfielder, and I can't think of his name. I blank. But yes, a great Sacramento tradition in baseball.
Yeah, it's there have been a lot of. I'm looking at that was 1974, wasn't it, when Aaron broke the record?
Yes, it was.
Well, let's see. I've got Larvell Blanks on that roster. I've got, of course, Sacramento and Dusty Baker. Ralph Garr was on that roster. He's a Southerner. Sonny Jackson was on that roster. Davy Johnson was on that roster.
Okay, keep looking down to the outfielders.
Wow, I'm kind of out of outfielders here. I'm looking at the 40-man roster. Ivan Morrell, who came over from the Padres. Roland Office,
Sacramento, where I watched him play at Post 61 for Manuel Perry, who was the coach of, sent a couple of kids to the big leagues.
And Roland Office is sort of the quintessential Sacramento player. He went to McClatchy High School, which so many of them did, and then he went to Sac City College, where Larry Boa went, and again, so many have been there.
And Larry Weinstein is the coach there, and he's legendary. Jerry Weinstein, excuse me, not Larry.
Jerry, yeah.
And he sent a bunch of people, and he coaches in the Rocky organization during the summers. I think for a while he was at Stockton, coaching there. So, or it might have been Modesto. I think the Giants have Stockton now, don't they?
No. The San Jose is the Giants. Modesto, the Modesto Nuts were Oakland for a while. I believe, I'm going to get in trouble here, but I think Visalia Rawhide is the Rockies' California League outlet, or was for a number of years.
They were the Twins for an awful long time.
Well, then I should probably hush my mouth and just look it up.
Yeah. Well, okay.
There's so much that goes on in Visalia that if you Google it, your first three choices are Visalia Mall, Visalia Weather, and Visalia Rawhide. And your fourth choice is Visalia Mall Hour.
Visalia Oaks. The Visalia Oaks with the Twins folks for like 15 years. And a lot of guys. Kent Herbeck hit a home run in the Cal League one night, and the next night he hit a home run at Yankee Stadium.
He was lucky to be able to find a flight from Visalia to New York. There aren't many.
Absolutely. I think
and
you couldn't even find a flight from Visalia to Fresno.
Exactly.
That small town, people, anybody listening think, well, we're in San Francisco, the liberal, the Bay Area, you go 50 miles in any direction, and it's the Old West. I mean, if you go out to some of the areas in Contra Costa, way out there, the thinking and the mindset.
I have always said, people have been talking for years about splitting California into two states. And everybody always assumes it would be Northern California and Southern California, and that is absolutely incorrect. It would be Eastern California and Western California.
You do it right down the middle, exactly.
You split it down the crest of the Coast Range. Everything from the coastal mountains to the coast is Western California or liberal California, and everything to the east of the coastal range, including the Central Valley and the Sierras, is far western Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I say that with love.
Do you think someday California might secede the nation? And at that point, we'd have a civil war.
The answer to that question is no, and the reason that the answer to that question is no is the nation, in order to do it, unless you honestly want to declare war on the United States, the only way to do it is through an act of Congress, and Congress would never, ever let go a state that pays twice as much in taxes as it gets back.
Wow, that's an interesting stat right there.
Plus, would you surrender 25%? No, it's more than 25. It's probably, I guess it's about 50% of your western coastline.
No. If I were them,
no.
Yeah. What are they going to do? What would the United States do for? What would they do?
Well, they would probably blockade the coast to start out.
Right.
I mean, I simply cannot imagine them ever willingly letting California go. And we weren't smart enough when we joined the Union to be like Texas and reserve the right to split into 4 states in the future if we want to.
Texas did that with New Mexico. Was that the idea?
No, Texas did that when the Lone Star Republic agreed to become part of the United States instead of an independent country. They had written into their accession agreement into the United States, their acceptances, I think, weren't they the 32nd state, something like that? I think they came in 1845, just a little ahead of California, and California was the 36th. That they had written in that they had the sole right for their legislature, if it chose to divide Texas into 4 separate states because of its size.
Oh, did not know that. Michael, get back to baseball. Did you see the Alus play together?
I don't know if I saw them play together in person, but I saw all of them play in person.
Okay. But there was, for those baseball fans out there that might not know it, at one time, or maybe a few times, all 3 brothers played in the same outfield. Absolutely amazing when you think about it. And you could add guys like Mota to those outfielders that supplied. I think Mota went on and won a batting championship somewhere along the line.
He did. He won a batting championship under Harry the Hat Walker in Pittsburgh.
With Pittsburgh. Or maybe I think he was with Pittsburgh.
Yes,
one of
he
them
was.
Went to Houston. Jesus went to Houston. Felipe was a terrific ball player. He had a good arm too. He probably wasn't the downtown Ollie Brown arm that you describe, but he was pretty solid in right.
He was. If you want just a little bit of the history on that special game, it took place in Forbes Field on September 15th, 54 years ago. So 54 years ago, early last week or 2 weeks ago, the game featured not only the 3 Alou brothers, but Willie Mays, Orlando Cepeda, and William McCovey for the Giants. That's 3 Hall of Famers, and 2 other Hall of Famers just decided to drop in and play too, by the name of Clemente and Mazeroski.
What a game!
They played 8 games together that year. Felipe was 28, Matty was 24, and a defensive replacement and pinch hitter. He started only 6 games, and Jesus at 21 was a September call-up. They played in the same outfield for a few innings in 3 different games in September. They never all started a game together. Jesus made his debut on September 10th, and manager Alvin Dark arranged it so that Jesus and Matty pinch hit ahead of Felipe, so they batted consecutively. And guess how they did?
How?
0 for 3 against Carlton Willie of the Mets.
Who walked by my candy store when I was standing there in 1964.
And what was it? You remember his nickname?
He had this long jaw, so I don't.
His nickname was Pump Handle Willie, because he had one of those rocking, huge, double pump windups, a little bit like Daniel Mengden showed for a little while when he first came up with A's.
Oh, he was pretty. I followed the Braves when the Giants first moved to San Francisco as a kid. I really rooted for that 57 team in the World Series that we talked about with Nippy Jones. Mm-hmm. But Carlton Willie was a pretty effective pitcher for them. 58. I remember Trowbridge and Willie and Joey J and those
Joey
guys.
J, yeah.
Very solid. Don McMahon pitched for them. That 58 Brave team was so incredibly deep. Shane Dings played second base. Johnny Logan was solid at short. Eddie Matthews, Torrey and his brother. His brother Joe Torrey wasn't up yet, but Frank was, and just a great team. And again, later they got Felipe Alou to play for them.
And
he had
right after the three of them played together.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mota went on and broke some since rebroken pinch hit records.
He held the pinch hit record with the doing it mostly as a Dodger for a very long time until was it Lenny Harris that broke it?
Might have been.
If it wasn't Lenny Harris, it was one of those little fire plug guys who looked like Lenny Harris, who was a pinch hitter forever.
Right. Lenny Harris looked like No Neck Williams.
Yes. And the Joe that you're thinking of with the 58 Braves, of course, was the man involved in the in that other perfect game, Joe Adcock.
And Joe Adcock hit a home run over the center field bleachers in the Polo Grounds, one of only 7 guys to do that. 7, maybe 8 guys.
I wasn't aware that it was that many. I thought it was only 3. And I know Adcock was one, and he did it more than once. The shocker in that group is Lou Brock.
Absolutely. And I saw that game. That was another doubleheader. You mentioned that you went to the one where Halicki pitched the no-hitter alone. I went to that game at age 16, that doubleheader with the Mets when he hit that home run. And that was the game where Marv Throneberry hit an apparent triple. He missed first base, so Casey came out to argue when the umpire called him out. And Lavagetto says he missed second base too. Don't even worry about it.
No, here's the story, because I remember Joe Gallaggio told me this in person. Throneberry hit what looked like a triple, and he was called out at third. And Yogi came out to argue the out call, and the umpire met him about 5 steps from third base and said, "Don't waste your time, Casey." I'm sorry, it was Casey came out to argue. He said, "Don't waste your time, Casey." He was out he missed second and first, too.
That's a better story. Whether that's true or not, that's a better story. You missed both of them. And he was out at third. I thought he was safe at third, but
the great umpire story is one involving Beans Reardon, who it was in Pittsburgh, and runner going first to third. There's a play, and he sticks his thumb in the air with great relish and histrionic acting, and yells "safe" with his thumb in the air. And the runner looked up and said, "Beansy, which is it?" And Reardon looked at him and says, "You know you're safe, and I know you're safe, but 16,000 people think you're out, so you're gone."
You're out.
And,
Michael, this is fun.
How do you argue with that?
Yeah. This is fun, Michael. We just go from name to name. I enjoy it. We'll be back next week, and I'm just going to say, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, keep on keeping on. I'm just implying the entire audience to just, it's putting one step in front of the other. It's all about persistence and consistency. So please continue to enjoy, listening audience, and go Giants on a year where the Dodgers win over 100 games. You want to give them credit. They streaked 2 times. They streaked for the good and they streaked for the bad. And I didn't think they were going to come back, come out of that tailspin. They did, and they still well over 100 games. I think they're at 102 games now. Amazing.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what they do in the month of October, and that's what people will remember.
That's absolutely correct.
Whether or not that's fair,
I will take my hat off to them thus far. Let's put it that way.
I agree. They've had an extraordinary season. And someday when you and I are old men, we can probably talk about Cody Bellinger.
Okay, that could be Thursday, by the way, on my case.
Yeah.
So,
oddly enough, the only thing about me that's accelerating is my age.
Okay. Keep it going, my friend. Talk next week. Thank you, Michael.
Until then.
Be well, everybody. Adios.